When I'm talking about evangelism, I'm not merely talking about the work of an evangelist that a pastor might do, but when we talk about evangelism, we have to be communicating this truth to everyone in the church. Everyone in the church is to be a witness according to their gifts, according to their callings. We will all witness possibly in a different manner, different methodology, but all are called to be a witness of Christ. Now, if you look in chapter 5 of Matthew, he says, verse 13, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Let's look at verse 13. "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again?" Salt has certain properties. If you take those properties away, you no longer have salt. If you take those properties away and replace them with other properties that may even be good, you still no longer have salt. Do you see that? All right, well, let's continue. "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men." Now, here's what I want you to see. There are certain properties that salt possesses. If you remove those properties, you no longer have salt, and it's no longer good for anything. There are certain properties or characteristics of genuine discipleship. If you remove those characteristics of a genuine disciple from that disciple, he's no longer a disciple, and he's no longer good for anything. And in the context, he's no longer good for impacting the world. He's no longer good for being the light of the world. Do you see that? So in order for us to be witnesses, there must be certain characteristics that we possess. And these characteristics will enable us to be the salt of the earth. That means to impact that which we touch. Now the question is, what are those characteristics? They begin in verse 3. "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Now see, you've probably never heard it this way before, but I want you to think about it. What is one of the characteristics that will make you a genuine witness? Poverty of spirit. What is another? A brokenness or a mourning over sin. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the gentle. Gentleness. Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Verse 6. Merciful. Verse 7. 8. Pure in heart. 9. A peacemaker. 10, 11, and 12, this righteousness that leads to persecution. Now, let's just ask ourselves a question. What kind of testimony would your church have? What kind of witness would your church be in the community if the members of your church reflected these characteristics? I am so tired of people talking so much about doing, instead of being. Being. All our doing, all our activity is worthless unless we are witnesses by our lives. This is so very important to understand. And it shows how superficial we are in the sense that when we talk about evangelism, when was the last time you heard or somebody wrote a book on evangelism and it had to do with the character of Christians? And isn't that what we're slandered for? Our lack of character. That our walk doesn't meet up with our profession. So if you want to be a witness, it's not getting everybody psyched up in your church to go out and share a tract. It starts out by being, not by doing, by being a witness. Now let's just look at a few of these things. Poor in spirit. What is that? Does that mean that someone has no joy? No, the Christian should be the most joyful person on the planet. What is poverty of spirit? It is this: absolute dependence upon God. A person who recognizes their weakness. See, here's something that you need to understand. Most people believe that guys who witness a lot, they do so because they're strong. That's not necessarily true. A dear friend of mine, Ray Comfort, who witnesses to just about everybody, is an introvert, believe it or not. And sometimes I have to literally tie him up just to get him to talk to me. He's a weak man. He's a very weak man. You see, weakness is not a hindrance in the kingdom of heaven. It is the catalyst to power. This is not about some John Wayne strength of will. This is those people who have learned to walk in dependence upon God can accomplish anything. Absolute dependence upon God. I can do nothing apart from Christ. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Verse 5, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who see sin as it is, and it hurts them. Now notice, we don't see here, blessed are the righteously indignant. Blessed are the critical spirit. Blessed are those who literally cannibalize other people because of the sin that they see in their lives. That's not what any of this says. It says, blessed are those who mourn, genuinely mourn over sin. They mourn over their own sin, and they mourn over the sins of others. It causes them to want to do something. Every malady, every death, every hurt, every wound, it is because of sin. And so we mourn over that. We look at ourselves and we look at our own sin and our need for mercy. And we realize we've experienced mercy through the grace of God in Jesus Christ. And so as that type of person, we desire to go out and evangelize others. Our need of grace motivates us to share with them the grace that we have received in Jesus Christ. So we're not crusaders. We are like those starving men among starving men, and we found bread and we just want to share it with everyone else. We genuinely hurt for people. We hurt for the damage that sin has done to them. It breaks our heart. You see, in reality, you need to understand something. The world only has one problem, and it's sin.